When you hear the word archaeology, what's the first thing that pops into your head? Come on, be honest. Is it a dusty fedora? A bullwhip? Maybe a search for a golden idol in some booby-trap temple? Look, for decades, pop culture has painted this very specific and, yeah, very exciting picture. But today, we're going to look past all that fiction to uncover the fascinating science of what archaeology is really all about.
So, let's get right to it. Are archaeologists just glorified treasure hunters? For a long time, the answer was, well, kinda yes. The earliest phase of archaeology, what we call antiquarianism, really was all about the hunt for treasure, beautiful or valuable objects. But trust me, the discipline has evolved dramatically since then.
And here it is, the official definition from the pros, Colin Renfrew and Paul Bon. The key phrase you got to lock onto here is material remains. This is where the real science kicks in. See, it doesn't just mean gold and jewels. It means everything humans have left behind. Their trash, their buildings, their tools, even their graves. It's all about piecing together a complete picture of past lives from every single clue they left behind.
So, to really get to the heart of it, we're going to go on a little journey together. First, we'll look beyond the whole buried treasure idea to define what archaeologists are actually looking for. Then we'll see how the field literally grew up from a hobby into a real science and how that changed everything. We'll take a peek into the modern toolkit, and finally, we'll tackle the biggest question of them all. Why does any of this even matter?
All right, first up, beyond buried treasure. This is the fundamental shift in thinking you have to get your head around. The goal isn't just to find things, it's to understand people. A simple piece of broken pottery can seriously tell us more about trade, diet, and daily life than a golden crown ever could. The real aim is to reconstruct the entire world of the past, using every single clue left behind, no matter how tiny.
And this, right here, gets at the absolutely incredible scope of the field. History, as a subject, can only go back as far as written records, and that's only about 5,000 years. But archaeology? It's our time machine to the world of the very first humans, members of our genus Homo, who showed up in Africa about 2.5 million years ago. It is the only way we have to access the vast majority of the human story.
Next, let's look at how archaeology basically grew up. It went from being this casual pastime for rich folks into a serious scientific endeavor. But believe me, it did not happen overnight.
So its origins are in something called antiquarianism. Picture this, it's the Renaissance in Europe, and wealthy people are suddenly fascinated with the classical world of Greece and Rome. They started collecting antique artifacts, statues, manuscripts, monuments as status symbols. The whole focus was on an object's beauty, but their methods for digging them up were, let's just say, primitive and often super destructive.
Then, the 19th century came along and changed absolutely everything. A series of scientific earthquakes just completely reshaped our understanding of the past. First, geologists like Charles Lyell proved the Earth was way older than anyone thought. Then, up in Denmark, C.J. Thomson created the revolutionary three-age system, stone, bronze, and iron, which finally gave the past a clear timeline. And then, of course, Darwin's theory of evolution established that humanity itself was incredibly ancient. All of this forced archaeology to get serious, to adopt systematic methods like stratigraphy, studying the layers of soil, to excavate sites with real scientific precision.
This new scientific rigor led to the most important transformation of all. It wasn't just about how archaeologists were digging, it was about the questions they were starting to ask. The entire field shifted from just documenting what was found to trying to understand why.
You can really see the change when you put it side by side like this. For decades, archaeology was focused on form. Archaeologists would describe artifacts, classify them, and create these neat timelines of different cultures based on their styles. But then, starting in the 1960s, a movement called processual archaeology came along and started asking about process. How did these societies actually work? Why did they change over time? This new approach saw cultures as these complex systems adapting to their environment, and it demanded rigorous scientific methods to actually test ideas about the past.
You can really see this as a journey of questions getting deeper and deeper. First it was, what is this object? Then it became, okay, what was it used for? Then came the bigger questions of process. How did this object fit into the society as a whole? And more recently, a new way of thinking called post-processual archaeology has taken it even further. It argues that we have to try to interpret the human mind itself. It asks, what did these people believe? What did their art mean to them? It's literally about trying to get inside the heads of people from the past. So how on earth do you answer these huge, complex questions? What's in the modern archaeologist's toolkit? Well, I can tell you, it's a whole lot more than just a trowel and a brush. Today's archaeology is a deeply multidisciplinary science.
It sits in this really unique and fascinating spot, right at the crossroads of the humanities and the hard sciences. It has to be humanistic because its ultimate goal is understanding people, their behavior, their thoughts, their traditions. But it also has to be scientific because the only evidence we have is physical, and it has to be analyzed with total scientific rigor.
This means archaeology is a team sport, for sure. To rebuild a past world, an archaeologist needs a whole team of scientific partners. You've got physicists, for example, who can use LiDAR from a plane to digitally strip away the jungle canopy, revealing the full extent of ancient cities like Angkor Wat in Cambodia. Structures that were invisible from the ground for centuries. You have chemists who can analyze the tiniest residue on a piece of pottery and tell you it was part of a stew made 3,000 years ago. It's this massive, collaborative effort to bring the past back to life.
But here's the thing, when you have this ability to unlock the past with such incredible scientific power, it brings with it some really profound ethical and moral responsibilities. This work doesn't just happen in a lab, it affects living people and communities today.
And this means modern archaeologists are grappling with incredibly complex ethical questions. How should ancient human remains be treated, especially when they are the direct ancestors of living indigenous groups? How do we balance the need for new buildings and roads with preserving our shared heritage? Professional groups now have strict codes of conduct preventing work in places like forcefully occupied lands. And when archaeologists study living communities to better understand the past, that's a field called ethnoarchaeology, they absolutely must have the full informed consent of the people they work with.
Which brings us to our final and maybe most important section. After all this, why should we care? Why does the distant past matter to any of us here in the 21st century?
Well, the discipline has moved way beyond just talking to itself. Today, archaeologists are focused on an external dialogue, using what they find to contribute to the biggest conversations we have about who we are as a species. It's all about taking the lessons of the past and applying them to these general, universal questions about human behavior.
To really get why this matters, you have to appreciate the incredible scale we're talking about. I mean, just look at this. If the entire human story were a massive library, written history would be just the last couple of books on the shelf. Archaeology gives us access to all the other volumes, covering over 99% of our time on this planet. Without it, we would basically be strangers to our own story.
And this is the ultimate payoff. By studying our full biography, we get to see the deep story of humanity unfold. We learn about where we all came from, the incredible resilience and diversity of human cultures across time and space, and the long-term patterns of our behavior, both our incredible triumphs and, yeah, our failures too. So, I'll leave you with this final thought. Archaeology is a record of countless experiments in human living. It shows us in vivid detail how societies have responded to huge challenges like climate change, resource scarcity, and social inequality. It shows us how they innovated, how they adapted, and how they sometimes collapsed. The question for us is, what can this immense library of human experience teach us about navigating the challenges of our own future?